Hello, everyone. Santro here for my Life and Channel update for March of 2026. And I have to say, I'm actually really glad, once again, that I do these because I've been really feeling like, wow, where's March gone? The month that we've just scooted through the month. Somehow we're already at the end of it. And kind of feeling like, wow, we're progressing through 2026 faster than I'd like, which is not an infrequent feeling that I think a lot of people have. Like, wow, how are we moving through the year so quickly? And taking the time to stop and just reflect over what's happened this past month has reminded me that there's been a lot. Like things that seem like they've taken a lot of the month really haven't. And there's been a lot going on. So let's just kind of start with the big thing that's kind of hung over the month, allergy season. So I basically realized, like, we had a very mild February. There's a reason why I say February. We'll get back to that. But we had a very mild February, and what that's meant is that spring has started kind of a little bit earlier than normal. And that means allergy season. For me, that's alder. I haven't gotten tested in quite some time, but when I did get tested, very, very allergic to alder. And what it causes is basically asthma. So what I've come to realize, apparently itchy eyes as well, but what I've come to realize is my eyes start feeling a bit itchy, and I'm starting to get some of these symptoms of having too much mucus in my respiratory system. Time to start taking precautions. So what are allergy precautions? Well, first of all, I basically try to avoid going outside as much as I reasonably can, which means no more walks with my sister during allergy season time, which is a bummer, but it's important to avoid exposure to the allergen. The other thing that I learned during the old COVID days is that wearing a mask helps a lot because it keeps the pollen out of my airways, which dramatically, like, probably not 100%, but it dramatically cuts it down. So that way, when I do go out for things like going to magic events or church or whatever, usually mostly just those two things, I'm not getting anywhere near the exposure to pollen, and therefore I'm avoiding the worst of the symptoms. So those are the kind of like the main things, but avoiding exposure to outside air is kind of a big issue because it means I can't, for example, open my window to cool my room if I want to do that. So I basically declared allergy season started at the start of this month, and that's something that's hung over the month. I'm going to keep up precautions up through Easter, which is for those keeping score at home. Next weekend seems a bit early if you ask me, but I'm not in charge. Anyway, I'm going to keep up precautions basically through there and then see how I do. If I seem to be doing okay, then it's like, hooray, the season is over. It usually lasts about a month. There's been some extenuating circumstances this month, and I will get to those momentarily. But allergy season, like I said, affects a lot of things. And one of those things that it affects is how much exercise I'm getting because I'm not going on those walks. You know, it's usually, we walk through kind of a park in a ravine. It's more of a less curated, like less greenfield park and more a designated section of forest on the side of a hill. So it's a good like 45, 50-minute hike basically with a lot of down and some strong ups and stuff. So it's some good exercise. And not doing that obviously is impacting how much exercise I'm getting, which almost certainly has some impact on my sleep. The other thing, though, that's also been affecting things is the other thing that happened this month, daylight saving time. And I feel like I've just not adjusted at all. I can't really go to sleep earlier very well. I can go to bed later, and I can move my schedule forward, but I can't pull it back. And that's what daylight saving time starting has demanded, and I've just not been able to adjust very well. So that's been a problem. That's been quite rough. What I will say is those two things combined have meant that my sleep has been, I think, on average worse this month than it has been like prior. And so that's been kind of rough. I'm not sure. I feel like at some point in time, I'm going to have to move my sleep schedule around again, and that's going to be the only way that I can adjust. I'm not quite sure when I will feel that I need to do that. I don't think I'm quite at that point yet, but it does feel like something that is coming up at some point for me, which I'm not thrilled by. Those are always a pain in the butt to schedule and coordinating with other people becomes rough with them and things like that. So the extenuating circumstances is so like I said, we had a very mild February. February is usually the month where if we get some sort of major snow thing, that's it. No, it was in March this year. March 13th, Friday the 13th, we got snow. And like this was completely unexpected. I remember I was making comments at the time that it was like January and March went to a swap meet and decided to exchange weather because we had some unseasonably warm days in January, and then suddenly it's getting cold enough to snow, and it was a fairly large snow for this area. In the Pacific Northwest, where I'm at, we don't tend to get a lot of snow. I grew up in the Midwest, where we'd get lake effect snow off of Lake Michigan, and let me tell you, we would get a lot more snow. And I'm quite fond of snow. I really do like it, and I actually, on that day, went out with my sister to investigate the snow in the forest. Now, this was a pretty damaging snow for the plant life, not least of which because it was like, okay, spring has started, and now let's take a moment to remember winter. I don't recall it snowing in March here for all the time I've lived here, and I've lived out here since like 2006. But like it was also just barely cold enough for it. Like it was around in Fahrenheit around 34, 35 degrees, which I think in Celsius is around 1 or 2 probably about 2 degrees, give or take a little bit. Without having done actual conversion math. So that gives you a rough idea. A little bit above freezing, basically, which meant that it was very like clumpy, like wet snow that really like sticks to itself. Because when it's really cold and it gets really fine, it doesn't stick to itself very well. So it kind of like is more of a dust. And this was very clumpy, and so it piled up on trees and broke limbs all over the place, knocked a bunch of stuff down. We actually took an abbreviated path through in our forest hike. There's an area where you can, like it parallels the sidewalk and you can exit early. It took us forever to get to it too. We had to clamber over and under trees and branches and stuff that had fallen on the path. Even the entryway to the path itself was like blocked in by knocked over bushes and trees and stuff. So it was quite gnarly in there, and it felt a wee bit unsafe. So we decided, let's take the early exit. And then we kept wondering, have we gone far enough to accidentally pass it? Because we would have expected to encounter it by now. But no, we were just taking our time getting through there because there was so much in the way. So I have no idea if crews have managed to clean that up yet or not. But it's trail maintenance has a lot of work out of them. But yeah, so that snow was wild. Very unexpected, and I have no idea how that's going to affect allergy season. I don't know if it actually ended things early and I've just been taking precautions unnecessarily, or if it's actually been like we'll extend it somehow or something else. I don't know. So that's been a bit of a mystery. It doesn't seem to have put too big of a dent in things, but yeah, the surprise snow was certainly a surprise. Other things this month. Let's see. My sister went to a rock and gem show and got me some bismuth, which is very cool rock. This actually inspired the look of some of the stuff in the Eldrazi did in, was it Oath of the Gatewatch, Battle for Zendikar? But it's a very cool rock. So she got me some pyrite last year, I guess it was. So those are hanging out next to each other. But I'm quite fond of that bit of mineral. I don't know what to properly call it. It's very pretty. And on the game front, I got credits in Dragon Quest XI. I intend to there's some post game, and I haven't really gotten to that. So I do want to get back to that, but there's something else that's come up, which is Playframe, which is the Let's Play channel that I enjoy watching. Finished Silksong this month, and boy, that is quite a game, and I am glad I gave up on it, to be quite frank. I don't think I would have enjoyed playing it myself. The difficulty for what it's doing is just a bit beyond where I'd enjoy. The run backs look like they were too long, so somebody who could just cut them out doesn't have to deal with that. Yeah, that seems good. The other thing is the platforming. I enjoy platforming to a certain extent, but when difficult platforming is kind of the primary focus, that's not really my cup of tea. I don't think I'd enjoy Celeste at all, for example. I haven't played it, but I have seen gameplay of it. I don't think I'd enjoy that. I think it'd just be a bit much for what I like. And that's kind of like I enjoyed Hollow Knight overall, and I did push through some of the stuff, and at least enough to get to the Radiant fight. I mean, you can see I have a playthrough of it on my channel. Back when I was trying to do Let's Plays, you can find a playlist. Maybe I will remember to link it somewhere in the description. Maybe my Hollow Knight playthrough, but I enjoyed the platforming in that game. But Silksong seemed like it ramped up the difficulty of the platforming to the point where it was no longer appealing to me. So, I just gave up partway through that and feel like that was the right decision. But I enjoyed watching playthrough of it. And then they started Subnautica. And I've been enjoying that too, but it also gave me the bug to go play Subnautica again. So I spent... According to my notes, let's see. I started playing Subnautica, what is this, the 16th? And then by the 24th, I had beaten it, which is 8 days, 9 days, something like that. I thought it was more of the month that I had spent playing it, but no, I just really shot through it fairly rapidly. It was fun to play it again. It's been a while since I played the OG Subnautica. I tend to play Below Zero more often, like I've done that one a bit more. Certainly, I have more playtime in it, and had played it more recently. And I did start a Below Zero playthrough after finishing Subnautica, like that same day. I'm like, okay, I want more of this. Let's jump back into the water. There's stuff that I like about Below Zero overall better. It is very interesting, like the differences between the games. So I'm not going to necessarily go into too much length right here, but to kind of briefly cover, there's some recipes, some crafting recipes. So those who don't know what Subnautica is, I should explain. Subnautica and Below Zero, they're the same basic sort of gameplay. There's some differences between them. Below Zero is a sort of a follow-up, more of like an old school expansion in some regards, where it's like, here's a new campaign, but with like the same engine, but with some changes, kind of like going from StarCraft to Brood War. Excuse me. They're working on Subnautica too, and I'm looking forward to that. Legal nonsense notwithstanding, the CEO of Crafton, which purchased Unknown Worlds, has proven himself as inept as one expects a CEO to unfortunately be. But the basic premise of these games is that you are stranded on a water planet, and you are trying to figure out what to do. The basic premises are a bit different, and the first one is just you're stranded on this planet, and you have to figure out how to survive, and then how to manage to escape. That's kind of the basic goal, but it's kind of a survival crafting type game where you can make sea bases and submarines and stuff, and some of those are a little bit different between the two games. But the basic idea is you are investigating this world, you are finding resources, you're making a superior base, and there's a story that's unfolding, and eventually you manage to complete your objectives and leave. So there's kind of the how do we leave objective, and then there's some sort of, okay, what other thing do we want to accomplish before we leave? And Below Zero like has some recurring lore elements and stuff like that. They take place on the same planet, 4546b. And so I really enjoy the base building, especially, I think, is quite enjoyable in both of them, of like setting up this cool base that you're then navigating. And it sounds like Subnautica 2 is really expanding that even more, which is very exciting. But there's definitely some things that I would like. I would like my storage lockers to somehow at some point be able to be upgraded to be connected, so when I inevitably start making multiple bases, to be able to explore different areas more effectively. I'm not having to try to figure out how to ferry resources between them. But overall, it's very interesting to me some of the differences between the way that you collect resources. So some of the key resources are metals. Titanium is your basic building resource. Then you need things like copper, silver, gold for electronics, usually all those, and then lead for some other stuff. They increased the importance of lead in Below Zero, so they reconfigured a lot of the crafting requirements, or like have different crafting requirements for certain things that make certain resources more important. So lead becomes a lot more important. Diamonds become more important in Below Zero than they are in Subnautica. There's a lot of overlap in resources. But they also kind of changed some of the rocks. So one of the common ways of getting resources is by breaking these little rock nodes that are attached around in this underwater environment. So you're swimming around, hitting rocks and collecting the ores from inside of them. And so they have one that stays the same, and I can never remember their names. Limestone, I think, that has titanium or copper. But then they had, was it sandstone that could contain lead, silver, or gold, and then shale that could contain lithium, diamonds, or gold, I think, again. And they changed things that way. Silver, gold, and lead all have their own version of limestone, where it could be those metals or titanium. And I feel like it feels like they are always whichever one it is that you aren't looking for. It's kind of a challenge, but it's very interesting to me though how they changed some of the map stuff. Subnautica itself, the world map, because it's a bespoke map. It's not procedurally generated. There might have been some initial procedural generation. I think they tried some procedural generation and figured it just didn't work well. So it's a bespoke map, but it's kind of like this dome shape where you start off in a shallow area and then you get deeper as you go out. And there's a lot of open ocean in Subnautica. And open ocean is terrifying because there's also their audio design is great, and so you're terrified of sea monsters everywhere. And I think there's actually more sea monsters in Below Zero, but it's just arranged differently, so it doesn't affect you as much. So open ocean feels really scary, and you quickly reach it. So it kind of fear encourages you to kind of stay in the shallows area, but you can't really progress if you do. And Below Zero does have some of those open ocean areas, but it puts them a bit further out and has them more discreet. So you're actually kind of exploring areas that are more like deep trenches and stuff. So it's super shallow higher up, but you have these deep trenches that you can go down to find stuff. I think that's a really interesting design change as well. So I've been finding it really interesting to see how they changed stuff up, changed crafting recipes to favor certain materials more. They changed some of the stuff with some of the submarines and things like that. So that's kind of like my hopefully brief discussion on some of that. It's just like from a game design standpoint, it's really interesting to me. Like, thinking about crafting systems, you have a lot of different tension points with crafting systems. And one of those is how much do you need certain materials and how available are they? And so those are balancing points where the more you need a material and the less available it is, the more valuable that material becomes to find. But conversely, like if you don't need much of a material and it's everywhere, then it becomes kind of worthless. And so the balancing act that you have with any sort of crafting system is how do you make it so that way the material that people need is available at the right amount where it feels rewarding to get and not like you're struggling to get it, but at the same time, you're not being laden down with a bunch of materials that you don't need or you don't need very much of, and you're getting too many of them. So like basically, how do you try to match supply and demand where you have nothing feels too much like an oversupply, and like because the demand is sort of sufficiently there, and that like is both how available is it and how much is it needed, right? And so it's interesting to see how like the contrast between Subnautica and Below Zero and how they kind of each try to strive to achieve that balance. I also think a lot about the Guild Wars 2 crafting system, which like, oh man, I think ArenaNet had an idea when they were first making like core Tyria that then like they weren't thinking about the long-term ramifications of, because like it is so funny to me that iron is more valuable in Guild Wars 2 than mithril is. Because mithril is so much more accessible because it's just there's so many more sources of it, and it's just so it's ridiculous that it is that way. But I find it kind of funny. So anyway, let's see, what else? I've continued to stream, doing that Unlock All Skills playthrough in Guild Wars 1. I will admit that I am looking forward to having finished it. It's proven to be... There's been a lot of things that have been kind of tedious about it. And I think there's a lot of things that could help with that. But I've also, I think, played enough Guild Wars 1 recently that I kind of am feeling a need to spend a little bit of time, like, taking a little bit of a break. I'm not going to stop the streams or anything. I'm going to kind of continue pushing through because I want to just see this thing through. But I am kind of feeling like I'm looking forward to getting to that point as well. And trying to figure out, like, there's been a lot of incentives to push through prophecies on all of the characters. But what the end result of that has been now I need to push through Nightfall and factions with them. There's also a lot of value to pushing through Eye of the North. So I'm looking forward to getting the characters to the point, like, playing through the game is fun up until the point you're doing it back to back to back to back to back, and there's just been too much of that. Like, I'm not playing these characters to play through the game. I'm having to play through the game to be able to do the ultimate objective. And I think that's kind of been it's had problems with it, with the mindset where it's like, who put all this game in the way of achieving my objectives? So I don't know. I do want to finish it, and I want to, like, get it done. I want to have accomplished it. But it's definitely, I will be glad to take a break and play something else on the stream for a little bit. So anyway, it'll probably be Middle-earth: Shadow of War that I'm going to play next for anyone who's curious. But I'll get there eventually. Other things, there's been some, let's see, anime watching that I've enjoyed. I decided I wanted to see what JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is out, so I started watching that. I'm, like, partway through. It's reminding me a lot of Gurren Lagann, like, if you really squint at it from a distance. High on style, a weird, significant transition partway through. I'm not sure how long it actually is, but it definitely reminds me of Gurren Lagann, in a sort of superficial way. I also have watched some amount of The Daily Life of the Immortal King, which is a Chinese show, but it was not what I was expecting exactly. It's been really amusing. Like, it is, our main character is so ridiculously overpowered that if he's not, like, constantly using these dubious talismans to suppress his power, it would overflow and blow up the world. And these talismans also kind of mess with his emotions, kind of suppresses his emotions. But it's very absurdist, and in just the sort of way that I enjoy. So it's been, like, right up my alley. So it was a day where I binged too much of it. But like, there was an episode where they're, like, reviewing the animation studio where the show is made, and they end up going into, like, the real world, and so you see some of the actual people that you were seeing animated versions of earlier. Absolutely wild, like, fourth wall breaking stuff, but it's fun. I thought that's been fun. I can also tell that the current season has been winding down. Let's see, I spent some time catching up on Fate Stay Fake, I think is what this one's called. I've been enjoying that. But there's been other ones that I've been enjoying. What is it? Something like Roll Over and Die, which is, or, like, not rolling over and dying or whatever. I forget the exact name, but I've been enjoying that one a good bit. But it's so funny to me because it's like the theme song is this metal song, and it's like, this is not the tone of the show. I'm looking forward to a number of shows that are going to be starting up next season, including more seasons of stuff. So more seasons of Reincarnated as a Vending Machine, Reincarnated as a Slime. I believe both of those are getting new seasons that are going to be starting up. So, and then probably the other big thing to mention, just kind of scanning through. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Strixhaven next month. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Magic set came out, and I enjoyed it, but we didn't like Universes Beyond is kind of an odd thing because we don't do very much of it at my local game store. I go to a weekly event, usually draft. We've had a few standard events that have happened, but there's just not enough interest for those to be firing. But we did we will do when Universe Beyond comes out, we'll do a pre-release flight on they happen on Thursdays. On the Thursday before release, and then 1 or 2 drafts. We only did 1 draft because the interest just wasn't there for doing another one of TMNT, which was a little sad to me because I enjoyed it, but they are more expensive, and Universes Beyond is very polarizing, unfortunately. Understandably so, I think. There's a lot that you can unpack with that, and I'm not going to get into it here. If you want to hear me get into it, I did talk about it a good bit with a viewer in the most recent, at the time that this came out, the most recent live stream that I did. But so we mostly just draft sort of whatever the universes within normal, whatever you want to call it, set is. So UB is just kind of like a blip that happens every now and then. So we've been doing a lot of lore and Eclipse drafts, and I am struggling with that format to figure it out. I think what I've realized is that I can't commit in pack 1, and if I commit in pack 1, I'm making a mistake. I need to just see what sort of things are happening. Like some formats don't punish committing early in the way that that Lorwyn does, and I don't know. It's just I've been really struggling with figuring it out. But so I'm looking forward to Strixhaven. Hopefully it'll be a bit different. I don't know. I've been very disappointed with Lorwyn Eclipsed. It's not hitting my Lorwyn Shadowmoor nostalgia. That's when I started playing. It was when 2007 when Lorwyn came out, and so my first sets were Lorwyn, Morningtide, Shadowmoor, Eventide, and it's like sort of hitting this nostalgia, but not quite right. There's just like a lot of little things that just are not adding up the right way to hit my nostalgia, and a lot of it is art. And I think I talked about that last time. So between like that and feeling a little bit disappointed in the set because it's not hitting this nostalgia the way that I was genuinely hoping it would, and feeling like I'm not getting the format, I'm looking forward to something different. So we'll see how things go with Strixhaven, this new Strixhaven set, but I'm looking forward to that. And then just like otherwise, big thing for me is I finally finished the first draft of the fiction book I've been working on. And so I've started the process of revisions, I guess, is I was initially thinking proofreading, but revisions is definitely the right word, because it's like, okay, by the time you get done with it, you've figured out more details, and then you go back and you're like, oh, I need to now account for those new details that I figured out in the process of going through this. So there's been some reworking stuff, but I've been working on that process now, and that's very exciting to be doing. So I'm not quite sure how long that'll take. It depends upon how much time I spend doing it. And certainly feeling like I'm tired a lot because of stuff with sleep has not been helping. But anyway, this has gone on a fairly lengthy period of time, and I think I've covered most of the significant things that I wanted to mention. So I am going to wrap up here. Hope everyone is doing well, that you've had a good March, and I wish you all a good April. Whew. April. It's about a quarter of the way through the year, huh? Well, until next time, everyone, take care and goodbye.